Hello again, friends. This week we rejoin Rip Van Winkle after a good night's sleep. All Rip knows is, after a night of partying, he has woken up not knowing quite where he is. His well-maintained gun has been stolen and replaced by some old broken relic of a gun. And his dog is gone. So let's join him and see what happens in the continuing story of Rip Van Winkle, Part 4. As he approached the village, he met a number of people, but none of whom he knew, which somewhat surprised him, for he had thought himself acquainted with everyone in the country round. Their dress, too, was of a different fashion from that to which he was accustomed. They all stared at him with equal marks of surprise, and whenever they cast eyes upon him, invariably stroked their chins. The constant reoccurrence of this gesture induced Rip, involuntarily, to do the same, when, to his astonishment, he found his beard had grown a foot long. I suppose whatever he drank could be used as a hair tonic. He had now entered the skirts of the village. A troop of strange children ran at his heels, hooting after him and pointing at his gray beard. The dogs, too, not one of which he recognized for an old acquaintance, barked at him as he passed. The very village was altered. It was larger and more populous. There were rows of houses which he had never seen before, and those which had been familiar haunts had disappeared. Strange names were over the doors, strange faces at the windows. Everything was strange. His mind now misgave him. He began to doubt whether both he and the world around him were not bewitched. Surely this was his native village, which he had left but a day before. There stood the Catskill Mountains. There ran the silver Hudson at a distance. There was every hill and dale, precisely as it had always been. Rip was sorely perplexed. That flagon last night, he thought, has addled my poor head sadly. Maybe it's time to give up drinking. It was with some difficulty that he had found the way to his own house, which he approached with silent awe, expecting every moment to hear the shrill voice of Dame Van Winkle. He found the house gone to decay. The roof had fallen in, the windows shattered, and the doors off the hinges. A half-starved dog that looked like Wolf was skulking about it. Rip called him by name, but the cur snarled, showed his teeth, and passed on. This was an unkind cut indeed. My very dog, sighed poor Rip, has forgotten me. Oh, of all the things going on, that is clearly the worst. He entered the house, which, to tell the truth, Dame Van Winkle had always kept in neat order. It was empty, forlorn, and apparently abandoned. The desolateness overcame all his connubial fears. He called loudly for his wife and children. The lonely chambers rang for a moment with his voice, and then all again was silence. Now he hurried forth and hastened to his old resort, the village inn, but it too was gone. Oh, that is sad. I wanted to go there. A large, rickety wooden building stood in its place, with great gaping windows, some of them broken, and mended with old hats and petticoats. And over the door was painted, "The Union Hotel by Jonathan Doolittle." Instead of the great tree that used to shelter the quiet little Dutch inn of yore, there was now reared a tall, naked pole, with something on top that looked like a red nightcap, and from it was fluttering a flag on which was a singular assemblage of stars and stripes. All this was strange and incomprehensible. He recognized on the sign, however, the ruby face of King George, under which he had smoked so many a peaceful pipe. But even this was singularly metamorphosized. The red coat was changed for one of blue and buff. A sword was held in the hand instead of the scepter. The head was decorated with a cocked hat, and underneath was painted in large characters, General Washington. Well, I suppose that's less expensive than carving a new sign, but it does make me wonder if they looked that much alike. There was, as usual, a crowd of folk about the door, but none that Rip recollected. The very character of the people seemed changed. There was a busy, bustling, disputatious tone about it, instead of the accustomed phlegm and drowsy tranquillity. He looked in vain for the sage Nicholas Vedder, with his broad face, double chin, and fair long pipe, uttering clouds of tobacco smoke, instead of idle speeches, or Van Bummel the schoolmaster, doiling forth the contents of an ancient newspaper. In place of these, a lean, bilious-looking fellow, with his pockets full of handbills, was haranguing vehemently about the rights of citizen elections, members of Congress, liberty, Bunker's Hill, heroes of '76, and other words which were a perfect Babylonish jargon to the bewildered Van Winkle. "Run, Rip, run! They're talking about politics!" The appearance of Rip, with his long, grizzled beard, his rusty fowling piece, his uncouth dress, and the army of women and children at his heels, soon attracted the attention of the tavern politicians. They crowded round him, eyeing him from head to foot with great curiosity. The orator bustled up to him, and, drawing him partly aside, inquired on which side he voted. Rip stared in vacant stupidity. Another short but busy little fellow pulled him by the arm and, rising on tiptoe, inquired in his ear whether he was Federal or Democrat. Rip was equally at a loss to comprehend the question, when a knowing, self-important old gentleman in a sharp, cocked hat made his way through the crowd, putting him to right and left with his elbows as he passed, and planted himself before Van Winkle, with one arm akimbo, the other resting on his cane, his keen eyes and sharp hat penetrating, as it were, into the very soul, demanded in austere tone what brought him to the election with a gun on his shoulder and a mob at his heels, and whether he meant to breed a riot in the village. I don't know about you, but I would be terrified. Everything is so changed, all in one night. And from Rip's point of view, the worst of all is his dog didn't know him. I would be tempted to start crying at this point. What would you do?
I'm questioning the sanity of the dude questioning the gun, because the gun is probably covered in rust.
Oh yeah,
and vines and whatnot. It's like, that's not functioning.
No, it's a relic. It's a rusted antique museum piece.
You put it over someone's head and it's just gonna shatter.
Yeah, it's more likely to give you tetanus.
Poor Rip Van Winkle.
Poor Rip Van Winkle. I wonder what Rip's going to do. I suppose we'll just have to wait and find out next week. Now it's time to ask you to like, share, and subscribe. The song of all YouTubers. Why? Because the algorithm demands it. We will not be able to find new friends if we don't feed the algorithm. Sad but true. Don't forget the notification bell. Just in case you forgot the notification bell, I wanted to remind you that there is a notification bell. Please consider joining our Patreon page. If you're worried about money, don't be. We have a free moral supporter level where you can still join in on the polls and conversations. I'm trying to post more frequently. I'm failing, but I am trying. I also have a Facebook and Instagram, when I remember them. I would like to thank Pixabay.com for all their wonderful content. Their contributors are just the best. I love them all so. But most importantly, I'd like to thank you, my dear friends, for joining me every week. You mean more to me than words can say. And now, for a special thank you to my Patreon friends.